There we go. We've got Cambridge. We've got Florida. Come on. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you for being here with us today, everybody. This is fantastic. Welcoming you to the Sacred Child Summit. I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes so that people can connect through their technology. Thank you for joining us today. We've got Belgium. Thank you so much. This is awesome. England, Netherlands, Holland, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Wayzata, Minnesota, Los Angeles. Thank you so much. We've got New Mexico going on. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to give a couple minutes for people to be able to join us here. I hope your day is going well, is starting well, and all of that good stuff. This is a fun day for us to be able to offer this to you all. So thank you for being here. I just want to wait a minute, and then I'm just going to begin. Show us in the chat where you're from. This would be awesome. Okay, everyone. Welcome to the Sacred Child Summit. The Sacred Child Summit, bridging science and spirit to welcome children into their first 7 years of embodiment. I'm your host, Kathleen Scherek, and I'm a former university associate dean. I've advised the Gates and the Walton Foundations about education, especially innovation in education. And I co-founded a Montessori-based farm school for young children that has served thousands of children and families over 26 years. And I'm also a little bit unconventional. I do some things out of the norm. So I've had some days where, for example, I have been teaching preschoolers in a Montessori classroom in the morning, and in the afternoon, I'm advising international executives about corporate strategy. So it's a little bit convoluted, but it's all in alignment with who I am and what I've been able to work in the world and offer to the world. So you might be surprised how much actually a 3-year-old and an executive have in common, but that's a conversation for another day. I currently mentor executive and entrepreneurial women in particular who are looking to become pregnant or who are pregnant or who have young children, as well as grandparents and child professionals. I was working 60 to 80 hours a week years ago as a professional when I felt a little tap on my shoulder. And I knew instantly, I mean, it was not a physical tap, it was a different kind of tap. It was like something was trying to get my attention. And I knew instantly there was a child who was trying to come to me. Now, I panicked because I didn't have any room in my life for a child. I'd never really thought about having children. It never had really occurred to me. I was just living life. I panicked and said, I'm just not ready for this. I can't fit this into my life. What am I going to do? And what I decided to do was to take a 3-month sabbatical. And I took a spiritual retreat. I immersed myself in all the beauty that is within. I immersed myself in daily prayer. I immersed myself in nature for 3 months to prepare my body, my soul, my mind for having children. And then also, before I had my first child, I decided I wanted to learn about brain development. So now it's common. Neuroscience is cool. Back then, it was not cool. It just wasn't known about. So if you want to learn about brain development, you go to, in my opinion, you go to people who repair brains. And so I was fortunate to be part of a study program with the Doman Institute. They're also known as the Institute for the Achievement of Human Potential. And these are folks who work with TBI, traumatic brain injured children and adults. The work they continue to do is phenomenal. And I, of course, went there to learn from the experts. if they are repairing brains of children and adults, they must know a little bit about what they're doing. And so my intention was to apply this. Imagine what could happen if these processes and these techniques were applied to healthy brains, healthy children. And this was my intention. And that began really a lifelong love of neuroscience, of learning research, the latest in learning, and all of these kinds of things. I also applied this knowledge in some unconventional ways in my own family and with the children that I was fortunate enough to teach, and in the school that I was fortunate enough to co-found and to run. So I know from personal experience that there are ways to see more clearly our children and ourselves. That's part of my inspiration for this summit. I created this summit so more of us would be able to celebrate the innate magnificence of ourselves and of our children. Questions that I asked myself as I was preparing for parenthood were things like, well, who is this child? Who is this child who wants to join me? Who am I? And what do I need to do? Who do I need to be to welcome this child in and to guide them along the way with the things that they need? So changing consciousness starts with parents, educators, grandparents, and the carers of young children who are willing to do things a little bit differently. And it takes unusual people who are willing to think outside the box to come to a summit like this. So I want to say thank you for being magnificent already. Just thank you for being here and for being willing to be out of the box. My hope for you is that this summit will provide some inspiration, might expand you in some ways, that you might find some gems that you can take away into your everyday life with children or with those who care for children, and that this might spur some thought on your part, that it might spur some new ideas and ways that you can be yourself in the world, as well as in your relationships with young children. That's my hope and my inspiration for this summit for you. So at age 4, I was mad. I was mad. I was on the swing set in our backyard and I was mad. I was so upset. My mom had been gone for a very long time and she was coming home today. And I was mad, so I would not come in the house to greet her. I sat on that swing set for an interminable period of time. What I did not understand at the time was that my mother had come home with my new youngest sister, and that my mother and my youngest sister had almost died in childbirth. So my mother had been gone a very long time, and she had a reason for it. I didn't learn all the nuances of that reason for many decades, but all I knew was that I was mad. Now, good things happened from this experience because my mother met a nurse in the hospital. Her name was Helen Wilson. And to this day, it's all one word to me, Helen Wilson, Helen Wilson. That's how we knew her. She came to visit my mother and our home for the next year and a half after my mother was discharged. So I got to know Helen Wilson and her essence. I got to know it extremely well. She was an older woman. She had gray hair back in a bun. She had kind of a big loose dress that hung down below her knees. She had clunky shoes, and she had an aura around her that was calm and comforting and loving. Sometimes we would go to the house of Helen Wilson. And it was one day at that house where I had an experience that I can recall in great detail to this day. I was 5 years old, and Helen Wilson had made gingerbread cookies. So the smell was wafting through her home. And we were there, and I can recall exactly that my hand was up like this. And that's because I was 5, and that was the height of the table that I was standing next to. So you see how my body remembers. I remember the smells. I remember where my body was in time and space at the moment I had this experience. I heard Helen Wilson's shoes clunking across the wooden floor. I saw her pass by me, and in an instant, I knew my purpose in life. It just appeared. It appeared to me. I knew it. It didn't appear as some job that I was supposed to do, as some career that I was supposed to lead into, nothing like that. In an instant, I knew that I was here in this life to be wise. To be wise. That kind of terminology doesn't seem normal for a 5-year-old, but it was to me at that moment. Those are the terms, the words that came to me. Now, little did I know what kind of journey it takes to become wise, because there can be tragedy and trauma and challenges and all kinds of beauty along the way. But my point about this story is that young children know things. They know things. They're not a blank slate. They're not something that we create from scratch when we birth them. They already have a knowing, and that knowing can be deeply profound, especially in the first 7 years of life. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you now, and we're going to delve into those 7 years of life a little more. Hamilton, New Jersey, thank you for joining us. Let's make sure I can do this properly here. There we go. So the first 7 years of life, let's just ask a couple of questions about kind of the unusual name of this presentation today. What is childing? What is it? The old world definition is to be with child, or to be pregnant. This is from hundreds of centuries ago. The Urban Dictionary, however, says it is to babysit. So in other words, a sentence by the Urban Dictionary meaning would be, Carol childed her nephew while his mother went shopping. I'm choosing a different kind of definition today, and that is when parenting is to parent, childing is to child. It's an acknowledgement that the child has their own process. It honors their own path, and it's unique to every single child. And what is sacred then? Sacred is an experience with the transcendent, an experience like what I had at the age of 5, where I just had this instant knowing. You could almost hear angels. Ah! Sacred is a personal relationship. It could be with nature, with a higher power, with God, with animals, whatever it means to you and your child and your family. That is sacred. And so becoming. Technically, it's any change that realizes potential. From potential to actual, from the soul to human experience, a foot in both worlds, our children are on a journey of integration. And of course, becoming is something that we are doing our entire lives. When our children are joining us in these first several years in particular, they're onboarding into life, and it is truly a grand adventure. Our child is a story that's emerging. They already are someone. They already have a story within them, a potential plot lines that we're involved in, and we can help navigate those plot lines, or we can influence them in ways that are important for the children. You know, we do too much of what do you want to be when you grow up? We do too much of this. The child already has a blueprint inside of who they are. Maybe we could do a little more of Who are you already? Who are you inside? I had a little song I have sung to infants in my care, both in my family and those that I've cared for. And you may know and remember the song, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Well, I changed the words a little bit, and I invite you to do the same. And the words go, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder where you are. And I changed this to twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder who you are. And when you sing or talk with young children in this manner, they know that you're curious. They know that you're interested. They know that there's some safety with you. What's our sacred role with children in our care? The child is our teacher. We hold a special place for them to become themselves. It's important that we live our own spiritual life in a genuine fashion, that we don't just go through motions, but that we show up in our own spiritual life, have our own personal relationship with nature or God, and then be aware of who we are self-evolving, and are we consciously evolving ourselves in this process. There is no need to be perfect, no need to have answers. Believe it or not, children do not want us to tell them the answers. They're here seeking, and we are here to journey alongside them. Many of the stories of preconception memories, the children say that they chose mommy, or they chose daddy, or they chose their parents. And so I offer to you that it would be good for us to be aware of what our soul agreements might be with the children in our care. So who is this child? They give us hints, they give us hints even before conception. If we start with a beginner's mind, as in Buddhism, start with an empty mind and look at the child with those kinds of eyes, it's amazing what we can sense, what we can feel, what we can see. They give us hints. They communicate by what we're drawn to, what we're repelled by. If they're coming into our family, whether it's through surrogacy, adoption, in vitro, assisted reproduction, whether they're biologically ours, if they're coming into our family, they communicate with us. I have a story here about a time in my life when I was 8 months pregnant. And I'm sharing here that they communicate through sound, colors, things we're attracted to, things we're not. Suddenly, our favorite food, we suddenly don't want to eat anymore. That we can have dreams about connection with children, or not even the connection, just an unusual dream that could be interpreted in different ways that could lead us to understand who this child is. There actually are telepathic stories that children share about their early life. And so all of these things are ways that they communicate with us if we can be open to it. So I was getting ready to give a keynote to a large group of professionals, and I needed to buy an outfit at 8 months pregnant because nothing else was fitting. I have certain colors that I like to wear, but what I noticed is that when I went to find something to wear for this keynote, there was one dress that was calling to me that just kept standing out. And I puzzled, I struggled with it because it was a color that I don't wear. I love colors, so many different colors, but there are some colors I cannot wear. I just can't wear them. This was a red dress. It was a beautiful red dress. And I just thought, why am I drawn to this red dress? I bought it. The keynote went wonderfully, looked phenomenal at 8 months pregnant in that red dress. And I looked huge, by the way. And then that child was born. That child is a Leo. That child is here. That child is here. That child has a presence. And I understood in that moment why I had to buy that red dress. So I'm saying that there was communication about who our children are that sometimes we take for granted or we can miss if we are not paying attention. Also, a woman, a surgeon, pediatric surgeon that I worked with had some concerns. She was 5 or 6 months pregnant and she had some concerns. And I said, well, what are your concerns? And I'm imagining she's going to say to me, standing all day in surgery, how's that going to affect my baby? How will that affect me? But no, she said, I'm really worried that I won't know this child, what to call this child. I don't know what to call this child. I don't know their name. And I thought, this is an easy thing to fix. And I said, the child knows its name. Just be open, just be open. And 2 months later, I understood that she had a dream and she shared, I know his name. I know his name. He came to me 3 times. I ignored it the first time. I ignored it the second, but the third time, I know his name. So I'm saying they communicate with us when we're open to it. They move us to new experiences or even solitude or something unusual for ourselves. They are here to open us so we can serve them, ourselves, and others. So there are memories and stories here that I want to share with you. There are many beautiful books written about prenatal and prenatal stories that children remember. And I'm going to read to you some of them from a lovely book called Babies Are Cosmic. And Elizabeth and Neil Carmen have wonderfully put together a synopsis of research because there are phenomenal physicians who are gathering stories and have been gathering stories for over 20 years. Doctors, Dr. Verney, Dr. Stevenson, Dr. Ikegawa, Dr. Onkado, Dr. Emerson, Dr. Chamberlain. These are physicians that work with babies in utero. Dr. Ikegawa is an OBGYN who has changed his entire practice around so that he can, in fact, he communicates directly with the children that are being born, and he tells them the things that he's doing, and he explains them. He explains the processes, and he has found that children who normally might have evidence of trauma after some unusual or difficult births have no evidence of trauma when this is occurring. So these are phenomenal. There's a compilation and quite a few books out right now about these stories and the research that's being done. I want to say thank you to these physicians and to the authors of these books, because children communicate through the stories they tell and the memories that they have. So here's a story, for example. When Chaya started sleeping in her own bedroom at age 2.5, she became upset and began to cry when she was about to go off to sleep. She explained, I miss my sister. Her name is Sarah, and she lives in a pink fluffy castle in the sky. Chaya was sincere and always repeated the same story. I was aware of this type of experience. This is the mother speaking. So I spoke to my daughter as though it were normal. And I said, well, just because you cannot see Sarah doesn't mean she's not around you. Sarah may be with you all the time, but you can't see her. By the time Chaya was 5, she stopped talking about Sarah. And as time went on, she doesn't remember that story anymore. Here's another story. Atticus, age 3.5. A healthy boy. He was born in 2011. His mother, Alexis, did not know her baby's gender until he was born. This is the story she tells. Just now at bedtime, Atticus said to me, I sent me to you. You what? I sent me to you. I came down a magic slide and there was a door. Before I went through the door, I said, my name is Atticus. And then I was in your arms. I still tear up thinking about the thought that what went through my head when I was pushing Atticus out of the birth canal. What came to me was, I'm a boy and my name is Atticus. I knew in my heart that this was my son telling me his name as he was about to come out. We have always had a special connection, and I knew the exact moment he was conceived. I felt that energy in the room was different. And the last story that I'll share at the moment is Sachi's mother was about to have her second child. Every day, the toddler would put her head against mom's tummy and ask to speak to the baby. Please, can't he come out? Can he come out and talk to me? Then he can go right back in, okay? Sachi's mother explained, it's just not possible, honey. You'll see him soon. After the baby was born, Sachi begged to be left alone with her new brother in the nursery for just a few seconds. Her parents were hesitant, thinking that she might poke or scratch him or try to pick him up and try to carry him, even though she was well-intended. But since they had a baby monitor, they decided to let Sachi go in alone. This is what they heard. Once inside, it only took her a second or two, and she said, "Can you tell me about God? I'm starting to forget." Sachi was 5. The stories that children tell us, what their memories mean to us, these are windows to a child's soul. The impact of our words and actions, they already know. They respond to. They delight in the transcendence of it all. A child who at age 5 is missing where she came from, is concerned she's going to forget about it. Very, very touching. These are normal stories. There are hundreds and hundreds, and I think thousands of stories in these books. So children are connected to the quantum field. They're not bound by time or space. They're talking about things that happened before they were even conceived in some cases. Children are spiritual beings that are having a human experience. Dr. Ikegawa that I mentioned before, the OBGYN who is in Japan, has categorized 9 different categories of memories in the womb and beyond. Some you may be a little surprised about. Prenatal. This is what from embryo to birth, from memory of the birth. Newborn infant toddler. Conception. There are children who have memories of conception. There are children who have memory as a sperm, as an egg, of life between life, from the end of a previous one to fertilization of the next one. How specific that is kind of amazes me. Past life memories, as well as some that may combine all of these. So common characteristics of these kinds of memories are that they are spontaneous and they're not prompted. They're matter of fact. Children talk about them as if it's normal. They repeat the same story over time. It doesn't change. And the details can be verified by family and adults. But these are details that the children themselves would not normally know. So what are the spiritual traits of young children? They come to us with positive attitudes, with a sense of devotion, with gracious behavior, a love of beauty, a reverence for life. They spontaneously pray. If there's a child nearby, a young child, and there's a statue of a saint or Jesus or Mother Mary or Buddha, children innately go to the statue unprompted, hug the statue, talk to the statue, and look at it inquiringly. They sing, they pray, they do these beautiful, spontaneous actions around holiness. And by the way, and they seek communion with nature. And by the way, when they pray about thanking. They don't ask for things. In these early years, they thank God or whoever they're praying to. They thank the trees. They thank them. They thank you for mommy's dinner tonight. Thank you for the puppy that's in my lap today. Thank you for my teacher today and what we did at school. It's extremely natural for children. And they easily absorb the same from us. So if we are these things, this is what if we emanate these kinds of things, they pick it up and they can become similar. So when we define spirituality as something like this, a personal relationship with a higher power that is loving and guiding, there is research that shows with this definition why a sacred childhood matters. Dr. Lisa Miller of Columbia University reviewed decades of research, hundreds of rigorous, peer-reviewed scientific articles. And this is the result. Adolescents circle back to childhood patterns to apply their new experiences, to apply to their new experiences of teenhood. So they're using their childhood as a touchstone. Teens who had a positive, active relationship with spirituality in early childhood, 40% less likely to use and abuse substance, 60% less likely to be depressed, 80% less likely to have risky or unprotected sex, more likely to thrive, high levels of academic success. If that's not compelling, wow. Even more importantly, shared spirituality with an adult in their life during those early years of childhood. This adult could be a parent, could be a grandparent, could be a teacher, could be a coach, could be somebody in the family, an aunt or uncle, lowers the incidence of later depression in teens by 80%. This is phenomenal. Spirituality is the root of wellness for the first 20 years of life. This is pretty compelling, don't you think? Now, there are other educators. Oh, by the way, I want to go back for a second and say that this research, by the way, does not show the same thing for a religious childhood. So that there are no positive markers associated with the intensity of adherence to religious traditions in a family. Religion only made a difference when a teen had already developed a personal relationship in their early years. A personal relationship, one that was transcendent, that was with a higher power. So early spirituality is key to children's physical and mental health. And so we have educators who embrace the spiritual nature of children as well. Dr. Maria Montessori, who was a physician, the first physician to go through medical school in Italy. And she has, for over 100 years, identified that children have a divine blueprint within them, that their journey comes from within. They have an inner teacher, a wise inner teacher that guides them. And she refers to children as cosmic, that they're connected universally to the universe. Rudolf Steiner as well, also a very spiritual approach, acknowledging within children that they are one with the universe, they have this tender capacity for love, and they're enamored with humor and delight. Also that they have repeated earth lives. And both of them have so much deeper writings and sharings on all of these concepts of children as spiritual beings. This is a very simplified version. So core, but it also, these are versions that are supplemented by the research. Dr. Miller again goes back to say that the research shows that children have a natural love for ritual and prayer, that they have this capacity for heart knowing, this intuitive guidance and a sense of oneness, that they have a sense of right action and they want to be helpful, they want to contribute, they want to give. They have an innate sense of the specialness of family. And they have this affinity with nature, a natural affinity, especially around the life cycle. So this heart knowing, which is spiritual perception, this is a child who senses the transcendence. This is me at age 5 saying, wow, I know my purpose in life. It's kind of inexplicable. And yet when we experience transcendence, we know it. It's a palpable energy. It rings true to our core, so meaningful, and it lasts a lifetime as a memory. Now we know this perhaps more as resonance, the signals that we might resonate with. I used an example of, oh, angels singing suddenly in our minds and in our hearts. goosebumps, we might call them, or chicken skin, or a shiver up the spine, or a gut feeling. There are some ways that the heart knows what our spiritual perception is. Our body tells us. Our body gives us signals. What if every day with our child was a goosebump day, a chicken skin day, a shiver up the spine kind of a kind of day where angels are singing? Wouldn't this be a beautiful way to think about childhood and think about parenting if we had an instance every day where we had this inner knowing, this connection on the connection deep within? So there are inner senses and there are outer senses. The 5 common outer senses are touch, sight, smell, taste, hearing, and researchers have also discovered up to 17 other senses. They include intuition, an energetic sense, electromagnetic sense. They include telepathy and clairsentience and clairaudience. Clairsentience being an automatic knowing, a sensing of what is happening in the world. Remember that senses are the way that we intake information from the world, the way that we process them, the way that we feel them, the way they appear to us. Clairaudience is an inner hearing. That when we can understand these other senses, at least be open to them and consider that they're there, it opens us to communicate more with our children unborn or even in their early years before they can verbally communicate with us. Now, the children are telling us through their stories that they are already communicating in this way. Clairsentience is a form of goosebumps, by the way. You know, clairsentience is a shiver up the spine. It's a body telling us our knowing. Babies in utero are using these. And so it makes some sense for us to be open and to think about cultivating them ourselves. So if we consider that the child already has their unique selfhood, they already have a divine blueprint, they have an inner wisdom, they have a higher self or perhaps guardian angels or ancestral guides from their heritage and from their family, that perhaps there are sacred agreements that they are here to fulfill, and we might be part of that, that they come in with a sense of karma, which is a beautiful grace that we're given to be able to have things balance in our lives, and dharma, which is in fact destiny. So if we already know that they have their purpose already, then how does that inform how we parent? How does that inform how we care for children? Does it mean that we are not, does it mean that we're different? Because if they already have their purpose, perhaps we're not here to help them craft a purpose from scratch. Perhaps we're here more to see them for who they are, see how they unfold, and help them, guide them towards purposes that resonate with them. I have another story I want to share with you. This is a mother relating this story. My 4-year-old son, Brendan, told me in a direct tone, "I miss my real mother. I just want to remember what her voice sounds like," he said in tears. I told him, "But I'm your mother." "Nope, before you, I had another mommy until you pulled me away and you sucked me into your tummy. I wasn't ready, but you were. I just want to hear her voice again." This gave me the chills. I had a few tears in my eyes and I asked, "Do you remember what she looks like?" And he said, "No, I just remember her love." This made me feel sad for him because he was in obvious distress. Brendan repeated this story on 4 different occasions. He's usually a rough, active child, but he was so super focused on building an invention to hear his mother's voice by taping together random objects. He has made 3 inventions so far, and then he becomes frustrated and ends up crying because he can't hear her. I see a different side of him now, someone with a mission. One time he stomped and he kicked his invention when it did not work, and he said, "I need time." I need to maybe build a time machine instead so I can go back and find her. You have no idea what she sounds like? No, because we didn't have voices. Well, how did you talk? He pulled my face to his and he stared into my eyes intensely. After a minute or two, he said, like that. So there's heart knowing and there's brain knowing. There's two hemispheres to the brain, the left, which is responsible for our linear thinking, our rational thinking, language development and math, and is very detailed. And then there's the right brain. And the right brain is gestalt. It sees the whole picture. It naturally has insight. It processes through images, through sense, through photographic memory, through art and music. This is important for a number of reasons, because research is now showing that starting in utero, at least starting in utero, that the right brain is more advanced and developed than the left brain until at least age 2. So if children are emanating their right brain, it can, and we speak to them in ways that relate to the right brain. By speaking, I mean communicating. Then we are more likely to be able to develop this relationship and this communication pattern that works for us both. It can affect how we communicate because the right brain is fast. It knows in an instant. It grasps in an instant. Images are flashed in an instant. It is not something that is time consuming. We have 7 years of gentle onboarding into life. And I want to be sure here that what I mean by gentle is that sometimes gentle can mean slow, but in this case, gentle means honoring. Because gentle does not mean slow to the right brain. The right brain is fast. The right brain captures in an instant. This is why photographic memory is considered a right brain activity. There are children in Japan in particular that are learning to cultivate this ability. And what they do to read a book, they listen, they listen, they listen. They can look at it and see images. They see images. Speed reading is a right brain activity. So again, how we communicate with children is better when we know where they're at. So before conception, this is how do we keep them connected to who they really are? Before conception, there are some beautiful rituals, and one of them that is so dear to my heart that I have learned about over the many years is that the rituals before conception of a specific tribe in Africa. It's the Himba tribe. And these are women who bathe themselves in red dye from head to toe. And they also go about conception a little bit differently. The birth date of their child is not counted from the minute that they're born, nor the time it has been conceived. It's counted from the time the mother has a thought that they want to bear a child. At that point, the mother goes to find a tree to sit under and listens carefully until she hears a song that represents the child that wishes to come to her. When she goes back to the father of the child, the father-to-be, she shares this song with the father. They conceive the child and sing the song at the time of conception, inviting the child to come to them. At birth, she teaches the women in the village to sing the song, so they sing it at birth. This song is sung at every stage of life for this child as they grow until their final days. It is sung when they stub their toe. It is sung if they commit a crime. It is sung if they're out of sorts. It is sung during celebrations, during passages into adolescence, at every stage of life. This birth song is sung. What a beautiful ritual that is just a beautiful ritual. In utero, we know here that cells differentiate themselves at about 3 weeks or so. By differentiate, what it means is that they have their own innate intelligence. The cells that are now dividing and multiplying they know automatically. They go to the liver, they go to the lung, they go to the brain, they go to the heart. They already know what kind of cell they are. There's nothing that has told them that. So when we talk about a transcendent relationship, it is built in here to the pregnancy process and the child's development at that stage. And so with birth, as much as possible, we want to let the child determine timing for birth. We want to create an honoring environment. Infancy, to just remember that this is gestalt, that the child, we may find a child that is staring at something that no one else can see. Remember, they're in a transcendent state. They can see these things. Toddlers can be lifting their arms to be held by someone who doesn't seem to be there. At 3 to 4 years of age, children often have imaginary playmates. At 5 to 6 years of age, there's an integration of all the previous years, and they also begin to lose a sense of transcendence. They begin to have less experiences as they enter the reasoning mind stage that lasts the rest of their life. So there's purpose for each of these stages. And as we can see, the connection with transcendence diminishes typically in normal progression here. Books about children and their experiences with angels, for example, have said that children report many fewer experiences with angels when they reach age 5 or 6. So how do we keep transcendence alive? By weaving our outer and our inner lives through our own attitude. What if every day was a goosebump day? What if we're open and curious? What if we're here to see who this child is without our own filters? If we have everyday rituals where there's a little bit of sacredness, a little bit of transcendence sprinkled in throughout the day, perhaps it can help connect them, keep them connected past age 5 and 6. We remember the power of the pause, that before we say something, we stop and pause. Did we really want to say that to this child? Did we want to say it in that manner? Can we change our tone about it? What could we do if we paused a moment? We create touchstones for children so that they have ways of remembering. Touchstones that could be a short video about a family, about their family, that lasts a minute, that is a touchstone for them over life, that represents a happy time, that has pictures of their family in it. And that this can be a way for them to continue to connect with the joy of transcendence and their own spiritual perception over time. Joy and celebrations are ways to connect nature, honing their natural gifts and abilities, and bringing meaning to our family. Everyday practical ways to keep transcendence alive. So if we immerse everything in transcendence, there are a couple of ways I suggest that we can help ennoble the sacred child. Infusing these with transcendence, because we are here to be, again, we are a detective about our child. We're an explorer, we are a scientist, we're a gardener, whatever metaphor works for you, that's what we are. We're not here to be their boss. We're not here to tell them how to live their life. Now, within boundaries and structure, of course, that's necessary for children to be free, to be themselves. But we are here to journey alongside our child, to seek out who our child is. So when we are this detective, they don't need answers from us. They would love us to be on the journey of wonder with them, alongside them. Oh, wow, what did you see there? Asking questions of them, maybe, or just witnessing. The most profound effect on children is who we are and who we are becoming. The first way to ennoble, I'm suggesting, is to honor the pure essence of the child. What if we saw our child as a transcendent being? What if we saw our child as a holy person that has entered our life? What if we saw them as a saint? What if we saw them as someone who carries a transcendent air about them? Would we treat them differently when they have a bit of a meltdown? Would we treat them differently if they spill their milk? Would we treat them differently if the child has a tantrum or is out of sorts? Would we say that they are here to trigger our buttons? Would we say that they have malintent, that they're doing this on purpose to get to us? Would they say that this child is misbehaving all the time? I think we might look a little differently if we know that this child is pure, comes from purity, has divinity within them. And if we can remember that at those stressful times, that's really the key, isn't it? The stressful times. So this is also a part of us remembering that who we are at our core is light and love and the essence of all things good. And when we remember we are pure at our essence, we can more easily see the purity of our own child or the child that we care for. Number two, to be innately curious, to embrace the unknown, to assume that there's more, to live the transcendent, to be open to wonder, to set our preconceived notions aside and instead witness and be open to things that we might not otherwise be open to as we're watching our child. Life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. Dr. Gladys McGarry said that to me once. She's one of our speakers on this summit. And I love that quote, life is a mystery to be lived. And so when we're curious, we don't necessarily need to know the answers. Number three, to know ourselves. How were we parented? What was our own birth experience? What are our own patterns? What are our joys? What are our gifts? What's our story? What's the story we tell ourselves? And then what's our real story about ourselves? What's our relationship with the transcendent? What's our spiritual perception? What traumas have we experienced? What are our big T's and our little T's? Big trauma and our little traumas. Our experiences can create our filters. So our awareness of that makes a difference. To learn the latest, to be open to the latest in brain development, the latest in heart development, the latest in trauma. How does your child learn? If you know what's happening with the latest, you can fit it together with what you're observing with your child. Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences came out decades ago. I think he's added a couple of intelligences since then. But when we know what the research is showing out there, then we have more of a platform to be able to understand who our child is. Be an early adopter of these kinds of things. The right brain, left brain. This, even though it's been studied for over 20 years, 30 years now, there are more things being discovered about it. The impact of nature. Learn the latest. What's the impact of nature? What's the impact of epigenetics and our heart resonance? Be an early adopter. Cultivate our inner senses. This is intuition. This is listening with all of our senses, not just the 5 that are bodily senses, but the inner senses. Open to our inner knowing, communicate with child. This allows us to communicate more with the child in ways that they innately already communicate by. The babies are already communicating with us telepathically. Are these really unusual senses? Maybe this is more of a common sense thing that we need to be able to be more aware of, embrace more, practice more. Deepening our practices around cultivating these inner senses is important too. And the last is mastering energy. Excuse me. We are made of energetic fields, the atom cells and electrons in our bodies, in our organs, in our thoughts, our emotions, have electromagnetic fields to them. The electromagnetic field of the heart is already measured at least 3 feet. And that's just because the measurement device can only go 3 feet. There are other electronics happening in our physical body that can be measured up to 15 feet away. So the measurement and the navigation of our own emotional energy, our own brain power, our own impact is important in understanding the sacred child. Every interaction we have, every relationship we have carries energy. So if we can parent in a coherent fashion, coherency means that we're in alignment with ourselves, we're in alignment with who we're really here to be. If we can parent coherently, then we can make great changes in our relationship with our children. The point of mastering energy is to be able to not to be perfect all the time, not to be in a perfect alignment, but to be able to navigate back there easily and to know the way back, to be able to use tools to do that. Next week, I'm offering a free masterclass on this called The Energetics of Parenting, because energetics and the energy of parenting is one of our most powerful allies. And I invite you to join me there. The link is already on my speaker page in the summit. It's next Thursday, December 16th at 1:00 p.m. Eastern time, and I invite you to come. We'll enjoy a lot of learnings about energy and how it can affect our parenting and our children. And I want to just leave you with this right now. I'm going to read it because for the audio versions of this recording. According to Celtic spiritual tradition, the soul shines all around the body like a luminous cloud. When you are very open, appreciative, and trusting with another person, your two souls flow together. This deeply felt bond with another person means you have found your anamkara, or your soul friend. Your anamkara always beholds your light and beauty and accepts you for who you truly are. When you are blessed with an anamkara, the Irish believe that you have arrived at your most sacred place, and that's home. I'm going to stop my share right now. And I see that we don't have much time. I wanted to be able to take some questions from you. If there's a question or two, Cosmic Cradle. Yes, it is. Absolutely, Susan. Cosmic Cradle by the Carmens, also another excellent book. The title of the book, this particular book, is Babies Are Cosmic by the Carmens. And it looks like Susan knows that it's there as well. So I want to thank you so much for attending live here today. I'm so excited for you to be here. Thank you to those who are watching this on the replay as well. I hope that you find some inspiration at this summit. I hope that you find some expansion in some ways, some gems to discover that you can take away and apply to your own relationship with children today, tomorrow, whatever it might be. And I hope that this summit can help spur new thought, new ideas in your relationships with children and our relationships with ourselves as well. This is about you. It's about the children in your care. This is about how we might be able to see ourselves more clearly and see our children as well. This is truly a sacred adventure. And I'm so pleased and thrilled that you're here joining us on this summit. From my heart to yours, enjoy the summit.